Welcome to my workshop. It's a double garage and an outbuilding in the front garden of our home, which we moved into 4.5 years ago now. And back then it was really just an empty shell with a pitched roof, and I've done loads of work to it to make it what it is today. I added a ceiling and insulated it, created a loft space for some extra storage, filled in an inspection pit in the floor. I also insulated all the walls, replaced 2 rotten wooden windows with new double glazed UPVC ones, removed a window and blocked up and rendered the opening, replaced the side entry door, installed new flooring, twice actually. I didn't get it right the first time. But by far my favourite upgrade out of all of them was the decision to build this partition wall with a double UPVC door right in front of the electric roller door at the front of the workshop. It sits about 500mm in from the roller door, and it serves a number of functions. It provides an extra level of privacy so that people can't see inside. It also makes the workshop more secure, and because the walls are fully insulated, that helps a lot with retaining the heat and also stopping noise coming into the workshop, as well as the noise going out, of course. But best of all, it provides space for all of my salvaged timber, which, as you can see here, is all on twin slot shelving. And if I could do it all again, there's just one thing I would do differently. I spaced the uprights in the wall around 580mm apart, but it would have been better to have the studs at 400mm centers. Having said that, these brackets have a ridiculous amount of weight on them already, and I've had no issues whatsoever. Right, let's go indoors now because it's freezing out here and I think it's starting to snow. The workshop is fully alarmed, and I've also got a small army of security cameras both inside and outside the workshop. In terms of size internally, it's about 5.5 meters square, which I think is about 18 feet square, and that's 30 square meters, which is about 323 square feet. And the ceiling height is 2.7 meters, which is almost 9 feet, I think. Last year I made a lot of changes, mainly focusing on optimizing space, getting rid of some machines that weren't working well for me, like the miter saw and the bench belt and disc sander. I also downsized my lathe, upgrading some machines like my planer thicknesser and my HVLP extraction system, and it all helped to free up a significant amount of floor space, but also to maximize in-feed and out-feed space at the machines that really matter to me, which are the table saw and the planer thicknesser. If you're interested in anything you see in this video, I can pretty much guarantee there'll be a video about it, and you can find the links to those in the description box below. Here are 4 things that are really important to me in terms of workshop layout and organisation. The first is drawers. I have a total of 47 drawers in the workshop, which may seem excessive. I can't remember who it was that said drawers are where things go to die, but I couldn't disagree more. Drawers for me are space efficient, great at keeping dust off things, but having drawers that are the right size, or more importantly the right depth, for the items that you want to store in them is really important. When I built this workbench, it had 4 pretty deep drawers, but recently I removed the drawer front from the top one, cut the drawer box in half and added a new drawer bottom to give me 2 shallow drawers, and these are where I store all of my hand tools. Because they're shallow, it's much easier for me to find what I need quickly. These 2 small drawer units that I got last year have been a bit of a revelation for me too, storing all of my tool consumables, drill bits, blades, nails, stationery, all stored in a compact area, and if there's something I need, I can just take the drawer out, move it over to my workbench and pop it back in when I'm done. I also love the fact that I can label up each individual drawer. So much so that I ended up buying screw-on label holders for all drawers and cabinets. I move things around and reorganize a lot, so it's great to just be able to see at a glance where everything is. I'll leave a link to these label holders in the description. The second thing is everything, or at least most things, on wheels. That includes machines, workbenches and drawer units to make the workspace easily reconfigurable. If I'm working on something big and I want lots of floor space, I can simply wheel things out of the way, like when I was working on a king-sized bed frame. And the third thing is using space that's high up for things that don't need to be accessed frequently. For me, that's usually timber storage. And the fourth thing is machine-related things being stored close by. So for example, over in this top drawer, I have all of my table saw blades. By the way, this thing probably isn't the best solution for storing blades, but it literally took 10 minutes to put together using scraps of sheet materials, and it works really well. It's just a dowel fitted to an MDF base with thin pieces of plywood between each blade so that the carbide teeth don't knock into each other and get damaged. And again, underneath my router table, I've got all of my router bits. My table saw is the Axminster AT254SB, and it's no longer available, but the iTech 01332 and the SIP 01332 appear to be almost the exact same machine. And back when I reviewed this, I basically said it was a good solid machine, but with none of the bells and whistles that most of us want, and with terrible dust extraction performance. But since getting it, I've made lots and lots of modifications to make it work pretty well for me, such as reshaping the riving knife to enable cutting grooves, changing the bolt on the blade guard to enable positioning the fence closer to the blade, changing the insert plate to one that doesn't require it to be screwed to the table, modifying the mobile base so that it has 4 swivel casters rather than 2, so that I could just move it to wherever I want it without doing like a 12-point turn, making the fence sit on the rail so that it's perfectly square to the blade every time, and adding a Straw Bite Workshop measurement marker. I also have 2 extractors hooked up to the saw, and with all those modifications I'm now pretty happy with it. But it'd be really nice to see manufacturers including some of these quite obvious enhancements and features to machines that are available at the lower price points, especially seeing as most site saws, including the Milwaukee, have many of those features like the toolless adjustable riving knives and toolless insert plates. To the left of the table saw, I have this cabinet where I keep all of my table saw push sticks, jigs and fences. And because I no longer have a miter saw, all of my cross cuts are done using this miter gauge. This is the Hongdui miter gauge and I've been really happy with this. I made a router table fitted to the table saw rails too, made up of the Souter Shop router lift and motor, its party trick being the toolless bit change where you just lift this lever in order to remove the bit and put the new one in. I made this fence to go with it, and I designed it in a way so that it would be permanently fitted to the table saw fence with bolts and wing nuts. But after a while, I realized it added a bit too much weight to the table saw fence and I didn't really like it. So now when I want to use the router table, I just clamp it on there temporarily and that works well. This area over here is for the lathe. This is the Lumberjack VSL 305. When I first got into turning, I got a few carbide tools and a few chisels, and then realized very quickly that the carbide tools just aren't for me. Even though I've heard many people say that they're actually easier to use, I find them more difficult. I tend to get more catches with them, and I much prefer using actual chisels. My favorites are the Crown M42 bowl and spindle gougers. They are quite expensive. The bowl gouge was around £60 and the spindle gouge around £40. And I think the price has gone up quite a bit since then too, but these tools are kind of lifetime purchases for me. The rest of the turning chisels I use are nowhere near as fancy. They're just regular record power ones. And I also have the Charnwood Viper 2 chuck, which does everything I need it to do in terms of bowl turning and things like that. I'm not going to show you what's in all my drawers as that could get really boring, but basically lathe accessories over here. This is where I keep all of my bolts, and each of these trays I can just lift out to find what I need. Parallel clamps and spirit levels. Obviously when using the lathe, keeping tools sharp is essential, and that's why I have my bench grinder set up just over here. And this setup works well for me. Obviously I've got a video all about this too. I have a 400 grit sanding belt fitted to this too, so that if I want to crudely put a sharp edge on a knife or a chisel very quickly without getting all my usual sharpening kit out, I can. And that works surprisingly well. And next to that is my pillar drill, my least used machine by far, and one that I'd be happy to get rid of, to be honest. But I have space for it, so it's still here for the time being. This top drawer is where I keep all of my painting supplies. And above those machines are some second-hand kitchen cabinets that I picked up from Facebook Marketplace. I've got one for all my sanding supplies, one for my pneumatic tools. In here I've got my denailer tool, my spray gun, and a stapler. And one for all my drilling stuff. I've got 2 hole saw sets, and yet still I find myself needing different sizes sometimes. The Switchblade Forstner bit set, which works incredibly well. I always like to write the sizes on the front of the box too, just so that I can grab the right size quickly. And I made this little drawer box to hold all my regular drawer bits. These bits by Dart are excellent. I've had them for years, and this is where I come if I need to replace a broken or blunt bit. Here is the machine that I've had the longest. I've had this over 8 years, and it was the first big machine that I ever bought back when I was working from my first workshop, the Shed. I paid £500 for it, and it's still available today. It's got some features that I like, such as quick release blade tension and a passive dust collection drawer. But the fact that you have to remove the fence rail each time you want to change a blade really annoys me. Also, the blade guide bearings are difficult to adjust, but I know that's a problem on most bandsaws. It's not a tool that I'm looking to upgrade though. It does everything I need absolutely fine. Just last week though, the table insert broke. So I need to figure out a way to make a new one. And I'm thinking of using this piece of aluminium here. Down here is where I keep my nuts, washers, and some odd sized bolts, screws, and fixtures. These cubbies are used for scraps, bits that are too good to throw away that might come in useful. And this metal cabinet is for all of my wood finishes, glues, chemicals, and flammables. And beneath that is what I call my air compressor garage. This is the ABAC Monte Carlo OS 20P. It's a 50-litre compressor which I predominantly use for spraying water-based varnishes, but I also use it for denailing timber, air blowing, and pumping up my car tyres. I don't tend to use the compressor for nails or staples anymore, as I prefer to use the Milwaukee M18 cordless 18 gauge nailer and the M12 stapler, which both do a great job and offer more flexibility. And I have my own makeshift spray booth which segregates one half of the workshop around my largest workbench, and that helps contain some of the overspray from spraying, and it's also useful for when I'm using a router jig to flatten timber, as that throws shavings far and wide, but the booth helps contain the mess quite nicely. Over here is where I keep my most used clamps, screws, and hammers and mallets, because my workbench is right here, so I can just grab things and use them as I need them. Here's what I consider to be the best glue bottle in the world. This is a red sauce bottle. I always keep a spare because they don't last forever. But yeah, these have a really nice long nozzle. They've got a wide opening, so they're easy to refill. And to open and close it, you just need to twist the opening. And similarly close to the workbench are all of my hand planes, saws, tapes, chisels, marking tools, tracks for the plunge saw, and all of that stuff. This is my main workbench, and it was originally built as an MFT or multifunctional table until I realized that I hated it. I'm just not an MFT guy, so I built a solid top for it using salvaged pine, and I'm much happier with that as a work surface, and it has a party trick too. These are my pop-up bench dogs, which I can use in conjunction with some dog holes on my vise to secure boards for planing and working on. I use my woodworking vise a lot and I love it, but I do wish it had quick release. I'll probably upgrade that at some point in future. I recently added some partitioning underneath the workbench too, so I've got space for my Milwaukee site saw there. And these are the support rails which I use for making cuts with the plunge saw. I know a lot of people use sheets of insulation for supporting cuts like that, and that's a great solution. I find just using some boards like this takes up much less space. I've kept one of these spaces completely empty just so that I can stash things here as I'm working on things. And at the other end, I've got all of my weights which I use for glue ups, and my metalworking vise which actually fits into my woodworking vise. Over here, I've got my sheet materials rack, so lots of MDF and plywood, and then to the left of that are my tool cubbies. And I've been on a mission for years to get down to one brand of battery, and I finally managed to achieve that last year when I got rid of my Makita chargers and also Ryobi ones too. And I'm now exclusively using the Milwaukee M12 and M18 system. This cubby system works great for me though. When I first moved into this workshop, I had the intention of keeping all of my power tools behind closed doors in cabinets, just to keep the dust off them. But I really miss being able to just grab a tool and use it and then put it back where it belongs. Wherever possible, I like to keep the accessories that belong with the tools in the cubbies with them. So for example, the track saw blade in there, the dust bag that comes with the planer sits above it, and accessories for the trim router in there too. And I built this sliding cabinet down the bottom, which has all of my routers and router accessories on one side, and on the other, my belt sanders and sanding belts. This is the YouTube plaque that I made 6.5 years ago when the channel hit 20,000 subscribers, and now here we are at nearly 250,000, which just blows my mind. And by the way, this is officially my 500th video. And obviously this is my charging station, so I've got my Milwaukee chargers here. This is for camera microphones and camera batteries. And we've got tool batteries and measuring tapes, paper towel, hot glue gun that runs on Milwaukee batteries. They also make these for Makita and DeWalt batteries. And over here, all my most used drill bits. I almost forgot to talk about bins. I've got 3 bins in total. All of them are galvanized metal because they're nice and robust, but this one I put on wheels and this one is just for general waste. And then all the way over here, I've got my good firewood bin and my bad firewood bin. Good meaning the stuff that I can burn in my wood stove indoors, and bad being things like MDF, plywood and pressure treated wood. Up here is where I keep all of my PPE equipment. Loads of different respirators there because I've always been on a quest to try and find the perfect one, but I've never found it. In here is my filming equipment, so you'll see all my camera lenses there, microphones, accessories. This is the main camera that I use, the Panasonic S5 Mark II, and I've got it on my homemade wheelie camera stand. So it's basically a galvanized pipe in a bucket of concrete mounted to a piece of chipboard on some casters. I don't really like tripods because you have 3 legs to adjust independently, whereas with this I can just roll it to where I want it and control the height using just one knob. And when I need some extra lighting, I use one of these M12 battery operated lights with a magnetic base because I can just put it on the pole and turn it on. But the camera that I'm filming on at the moment is this, the Osmo Pocket 3. So all of the face tracking and the movement shots that you might have seen in this video are done on this. This is one of my newest machines, the iTech 260SS planer thicknesser, and I did a video about this very recently, so moving on. This empty space over here just allows me some extra in-feed and out-feed space when I'm working at the planer thicknesser, and I've got just under 2 meters of out-feed space here. This is what I call dust extraction corner. I've got the SIP 01992, which I've set up as a 2-stage filtration system with a cyclone, and that takes care of extraction from my table saw cabinet and also the planer thicknesser, and both are set up on their own blast gates. This extractor is okay apart from the poorly fitted cartridge, hence all of the gaffer tape around here because dust was emanating from the filter every time it was switched on. And then over here is my vacuum extractor, which takes care of all of my other extraction needs. This is also connected up to a cyclone, and then it's ducted up and across over to this pillar where I've got blast gates set up to the crown guard on my table saw and also to this hose which I use to connect up to my sanders and other power tools. I'm a big fan of this machine, particularly for how quiet it is. It has twin motors, so it's really quite powerful, and also with the microfilter fitted, it's an M-class extractor. And both extractors are set up on remote controls. I've also got my air quality monitor up here just so that I can keep an eye on dust levels in the workshop. And the air filtration unit obviously helps keep the air clean. My second workbench functions mainly as an outfeed table for the table saw. On one side it has my sharpening jigs, and on the other my sander and sanding supplies. Just a reminder that if there was anything of interest to you in this video, there are loads of links in the description box where you can find more information. Thank you for watching.